Divine transformation. 40 days of chaos precede miraculous deliverance and prophetic healing. The atmosphere crackled with divine anticipation as Margaret stepped into the community center, her heart pounding with an electric mixture of hope and fear. Today was different. A prophetic word had been spoken. It soared like a hymn through the rafters, reaching the heavens and crashing down into their lives. Healing is coming, the pastor exclaimed, his voice rich with faith and authority. The faithful gathered beneath flickering lights, candles casting shadows dancing on the walls, an ethereal glow wrapping around their expectant faces like a holy embrace. Joe, her beloved, was fighting a battle no one understood, his illness casting a dark pall over their family. Each night, their living room transformed into a sacred sanctuary. The scent of candles intertwined with fervent prayers. The three of them gathered, hands clasped, eyes closed. Saint Jude, the intercessor for impossible causes, became a frequent guest in their prayers. We plead for a miracle, they cried, their voices rising like a chorus of angels. A powerful community united in love and hope. Then came the pastor's message. Joe's healing would emerge only after 40 grueling days of trials. Margaret's heart soared at the sound, yet a whisper of doubt rustled like fading leaves. Can faith withstand such pressure? She pondered. Chaos soon enveloped her world. Nights blurred into darkness as prayers sometimes felt like echoes in an empty chamber. Her children's eyes held a mixture of fear and trust, and Margaret found herself shielded by the soft glow of faith yet battered by the encroaching shadows. Each day of their trial brought new challenges. Bank statements misaligned with their budget, a sudden car breakdown, and whispers of scandal rippling through their church community. Divisions hardened faith. Yet voices of support dwindled, unsure how to navigate their own trials while supporting hers. Is our community breaking apart? She wondered as the bond of her family tugged at her heart. Margaret cradled her worries like a child, tender yet heavy, clinging to the promise that healing was on the horizon. The penultimate morning arrived, and the sky shimmered with a holy light. Her family gathered again for prayer as if to launch their hearts into the cosmos. But this time, uncertainty gripped her soul like a vice. Would this be the day their faith stood tall or crumbled like soft clay? Just then, whispers rippled through the room during a tense church meeting, fingers pointing, accusations flinging like arrows. Margaret watched, breath caught in her throat. A voice within her stirred, "Stand firm." And when the air went still, the silence pulsed with expectancy. Something is about to happen. Eyes filled with tears of joy opened wide as her heart raced. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Margaret looked into Joe's eyes, hope mingled with the flickering fear inside her. The room held its breath, waiting for the divine to break through, for something miraculous to unfold. Would this chaos finally lead to their deliverance? Or had the ultimate trial yet to come? The question hung heavy in the air, trembling with the weight of faith and possibility. The atmosphere shifted palpably when the pastor called for silence. A stillness, thick with tension, draped over the community center like a warm, enveloping blanket, yet underscored with the weight of uncertainty. Margaret held her breath, drawing strength from Joe's unwavering gaze. There was a flicker of recognition, a ghost of understanding between them, the knowing that something sacred was unfolding in their midst. Let us pray, the pastor urged, his voice breaking through their silence. The congregation responded. A wave of murmured amens and clasped hands flooded the space. In that moment, Margaret surrendered to the silence, allowing her spirit to soar and questions to shatter like glass. Could they be on the brink of a miracle? Was each trial, each ache of her heart, carving the path for glory yet unseen? As the pastor led them into deeper prayer, Margaret felt the electric tension in the air shift. Perhaps chaos wasn't merely disruptive. Perhaps it was divine choreography, moving them towards something beautiful. She closed her eyes, and in her mind, she envisioned Joe-heeled laughter returning to his eyes, strength flooding back into his limbs. Was it too much to grasp? Just one joyful picture in the crowd of despair? Lord, pour your healing power upon us, the pastor cried. The volume of voices crescendoed, reaching a spiritual fervor that echoed against the walls. Margaret joined in, her heart uplifted. Yes, Lord. But with each declaration of hope, shadows of doubt pulsed at the edges of her faith. Was her love for Joe strong enough to withstand the meteor shower of uncertainty? Suddenly, a clap of thunder erupted from outside, rattling the windows. Startled gasps rose, yet Margaret didn't flinch. Instead, she felt a strange assignment in her heart. Something solemn yet thrilling stirred within her. The drums of faith were beating, and she had to respond. Let this storm remind us of your might, Lord, she whispered fervently, her palms warm against her chest. And then it happened. A soft light began to swirl around the altar, teasing the shadows away. Those present, drawn by the anomaly, turned their heads simultaneously. Was it just a trick of the candles? Or was heaven truly breaking through? Margaret felt her heart leap. This was not mere coincidence. This was a divine invitation, daring her to step out of her limited expectations. As she stepped forward, a radiant warmth enveloped her. Gathering her courage, she lifted her voice. If anyone here feels the presence of the Lord, if anyone needs healing their hearts or their bodies, come forward. Fear melted into exhilaration as a few started to move, slowly at first, then more boldly. The spirit of unity permeated the space, drawing more and more together in faith. Margaret glanced back at Joe, heart swelling with an inexplicable peace. It was as if an army had rallied under a holy banner. She was not alone. She felt the truths they had declared as a family unfolding in those moments, transforming once sought-after isolation into a pulsating community of believers. Their energy coalesced around the altar, a tapestry of hope woven from collective struggles. With each step, Margaret felt the burdens of doubt lifting, mirroring the light that was breaking through the storm. The pastor raised his hands, inviting communion with the Holy Spirit. Let faith arise, he called, and the room ignited like a bonfire. But as Margaret basked in the glow of their gathering strength, a gut-wrenching realization surfaced. Was Joe truly ready to rise, to truly walk away from his suffering? Was he willing, even amidst the blinding light they were creating? She hesitated, the question reverberating in her heart like the toll of a bell. And just as the community surged forward in united faith, in the deepest core of her being, she felt the breath of divinity whispering. But what God had not yet revealed, the mystery hung heavy in the air, stirring yet again an anticipation for the miracles that loomed ahead. Would they be ready to embrace what lay at the heart of their most profound challenge? The moment stretched into eternity as Margaret stood at the forefront, the vibrant energy of hope flowing around her. The colors of devotion painted the faces of her friends and strangers alike, their eyes gleaming with an unquenchable desire for healing. She felt like a vessel, filled with light and purpose, yet still chained by the weight of her questions. The pastor beckoned her closer to the altar. Let us pray for those in need, for the power of healing to surge like a river. His voice was filled with passion, electrifying the air. The congregation joined in, their fervent prayers weaving an intricate melody that pierced through the storm outside. Margaret stepped forward, her heart beating like a drum in the stillness. She called out again, if you need strength, if you've come burdened or broken, come forward. Each word felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent seas. She watched as people moved toward the altar, some stepping boldly while others hesitated. They were all bound by the common desire for healing. As she reached out to touch those who came forward, warmth radiated through her fingers. Each connection felt like a spark igniting. The whispers grew around her, intertwining tales of pain and loss with stories of resilience and faith. One woman, frail with tears glistening like dew, grasped Margaret's hands. I don't know how much longer I can fight, she confessed, her voice trembling. But Margaret squeezed her hands tighter, feeling the flicker of hope, the delicate flame that refused to waver. You are not alone, Margaret declared, her words spilling forth with conviction. Faith isn't just a solitary journey. We are here together. This simple truth danced in the air, and Margaret was swept up in the momentum. The congregation enveloped the altar, a tapestry woven from multicolored threads of pain and faith. She saw men, women, and children joining the chorus, each one lifting their burdens into the hands of the Almighty. With every prayer spoken, Margaret caught glimpses of the divine, the light swirling with purpose, illuminating the faces around her. She felt the shadows of doubt begin to recede, the whisper of faith growing louder. It wasn't just about Joe anymore. It was about a whole community rising from the ashes. As thoughts intertwined with fervent prayers, the pastor's voice broke through like a beacon. We have witnessed the struggle, but we are called to see the glory. God is moving among us. The thunder outside echoed this declaration, a divine affirmation. Margaret closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. Could it be that their voices had reached beyond the heavens? Were the angels themselves amplifying their cries? Suddenly, she felt a warmth encircling her like a gentle embrace. The atmosphere shifted again as the whispers turned into a roar, a cry for miraculous intervention. It reverberated through the walls, and the sanctuary pulsed with a heartbeat of resiliency. But amidst the rising tide of faith, Margaret's heart wavered with the question she had almost managed to suppress. Would Joe, the man she adored, truly step into the light? Would he relinquish his pain to embrace healing? In that transformative moment, clarity washed over her. Lord, she murmured, help us to embrace what lies ahead, even when we cannot see. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted them toward the heavens, inviting those around her to join. Everyone stood in unison, voices rising, hearts entwined in belief. And yet, even with this collective strength, the mystery loomed large. The pastor, sensing the atmosphere thickening, declared, God is about to unfurl his plans. Are we ready to witness his power? This call sent waves of anticipation through the crowd. What might they discover when faith collided with divine reality? Would fear yield to a miraculous transformation? Or would the journey require pressing through even more uncertainty? The air buzzed thick with anticipation, as every heart in the sanctuary beat like a war drum, ready for victory. Margaret felt the swell of faith surge in waves, crashing against her senses. It pulsed like a tidal force, and she knew they stood on the brink of something monumental. She opened her eyes, the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows along the walls, creating a sacred space, a hallowed ground where doubts could dissolve into trust. Each person before her carried their stories like burdens, hidden pain, broken dreams, unanswered prayers. It was a tapestry of human existence, each thread wound tightly around hope and despair. As Margaret spoke words of encouragement, she could see that same thread pulling through the congregation. A young father with worry etched on his brow, a mother with a heavy heart, and lonely souls seeking solace. Everyone needed to know they mattered. Take a moment, she urged, allowing silence to cling to them like a thick mist. In this stillness, invite his presence. Let him embrace your fears and celebrate your joys. Allow the Almighty to wash over you. The echoes of her voice floated among them, sinking deep into their hearts. A hush fell upon the room, the world outside fading to a distant whisper as they sought connection. Margaret closed her own eyes and breathed. In that simplicity, she felt the warmth grow stronger, wrapping around her, flooding every crevice of her spirit. Then she felt it, the stirring of the divine. A fire ignited within her soul, a burning desire to share the goodness she was feeling. He is here, she proclaimed, the words spilling like water from a broken pitcher. His love knows no bounds. The atmosphere thickened, radiating electric energy. The murmurs turned to cries of joy and supplication. Songs erupted like fireworks of faith lighting up the night. No longer mere sounds, they morphed into a whirlwind of praise that circled above them, spiraling upward like a rallying cry. As she looked around, Margaret could see changes take place, faces lifted, eyes wet with tears, some filled with laughter unearned yet cherished. The weight of burdens began to lift, even those shared in silence. In that sacred exchange, healing could be felt like a balm spreading through their hearts. Then she spotted a familiar figure hesitating at the back. Joe. Her heart raced, both with joy and trepidation. He stood there, fists clenched, uncertainty written all over his face. Would he find the courage to step forward, to release the pain that had held him captive for too long? Joe, she called out, her voice cutting through the noise, a beacon guiding him home. Come, feel this love and light. The moment hung in the air like a suspended note. Joe looked from her to the gathering crowd and then back again. The chaos around them faded into a soft hum, as if the world held its breath. Margaret raised her hands once more, inviting the community's power to envelop him. We are in this together. Joe, this is your moment too. Slowly, he moved forward, drawn by her voice and the shimmering tide of support. The congregation instinctively parted like water for him, creating a path lined with love and affirmation. With each step toward Margaret, it felt like years of pain began to melt away. The tears he had held back for so long spilled down his cheeks, unashamed. As he reached her, Margaret embraced him, feeling the warmth of his spirit unraveling. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers, but then faded into soft awe as the pastor urged them once more. Prepare your hearts. Healing isn't just a moment. It's a journey, an unfolding of God's promises. Margaret glanced around, the light of hope illuminating the sanctuary, revealing deep transformation brewing. The heaviness of the past was slowly lifting, yet the air still held an unspoken question. What new trials awaited them on this journey? And how would their faith hold up as they continued to push into the divine mystery? With the atmosphere still buzzing, warmth radiating like a gentle wave, Margaret and Joe stood at the center, surrounded by a sea of open hearts. The elders of the congregation stepped forward, their faces glowing with the light of shared faith. Margaret could see how the Holy Spirit moved among them, guiding each soul to find their place in this beautiful mosaic of love and healing. Let us remember, the pastor's voice rang out, reverberating with truth. Faith isn't just a feeling. It demands action. We step forward when we believe, when we trust in what isn't visible. As people nodded and murmured their agreement, Margaret felt an urgent urge to emphasize a deeper truth, a lesson nestled within their experiences. She began to address not only Joe but the entire congregation. It's in this crucible of trial that faith blooms. It flourishes in uncertainty, like a flower breaking through hardened earth. A young woman in the front row, teary-eyed, raised her hand. But how do we know it'll be worth it? What if our prayers remain unanswered? Her vulnerability opened the floodgates, and many began nodding. Doubts surfaced like waves crashing against the shore. Margaret sensed the tension building, a collective ache for reassurance. Trust, she implored, her voice steady and aflame with passion. When we step beyond the shadows of our fears, we find the radiance of His light. Brothers and sisters, every tear you shed waters the seeds sown in faith. Gasps filled the room as the warmth of her encouragement permeated their hearts. Margaret knew these moments needed grounding. So, she shared stories, truths of struggles overcome, light breaking through thick darkness. She spoke of the Red Sea, of journeys through wilderness, and of the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey that lay just beyond pain. A promise clouded only by the fog of disbelief. As she spoke, she glanced at Joe, whose tears had transformed into a gleam of hope. His smile was tentative but blooming. It was contagious, igniting a ripple of laughter across the room. Then, the lights dimmed slightly, casting shadows anew as candle flames flickered with gusts of air, creating an ethereal dance that still surrounded them. A voice pierced the stillness. Margaret, can we truly believe that this time is different? Will we see the miracles we've prayed for? It was the frail voice of an elderly man from the back, echoing their fears aloud. Ah, dear friend, Margaret replied softly, feeling the weight of his question. What God had not yet revealed is that our struggles forge resilience. Our waiting cultivates strength. Miracles often come dressed in ambiguity and uncertainty. Faith is not the absence of doubt but the choice to believe anyway. The congregation held their breath, still lingering on her words. In that silence, Margaret sensed a stirring in their spirits, a collective awakening. She invited them one more time to share the burdens they carried, to speak the whisper of hope that blossomed within. Margaret watched as hands began to rise. Each was a call, a declaration of faith. They began to share, testimonies intertwined, their voices soaring like a symphony of redemption. But among the sounds of their shared faith arose a singular question that loomed like a cloud ready to burst. Could they withstand the chaos ahead? With new trials unfolding, would they both grow stronger or falter in their steps? As the congregation united in prayer, Margaret could feel the weight of anticipation settle over them, a weight that mirrored the unfurling mystery of what lay beyond their current understanding. In that sacred sanctuary, under the watchful gaze of the Almighty, they stood at the precipice of transformation, trembling yet expectant for what was to come. Would they then embrace the storm, ready for the miraculous deliverance waiting just beyond the winds of chaos? As the fervor of prayer enveloped the congregation, a palpable energy coursed through the air, each heartbeat echoing with a longing for divine intervention. The candles, flickering in muted shades of amber, painted shadows that danced along the walls, stirring an awe that settled in their midst. They were not alone. Each whisper of hope merged with the breath of countless prayers lifted like fragrant incense to the heavens. Margaret leaned into the moment, feeling the weight of their faith and fears intertwine. She spoke again. Let us live in this tension together. Our uncertainties may seem like chains, but they can also be the threads weaving us into a stronger fabric of belief. The faces before her reflected a myriad of emotions: restlessness, hope, and even the flicker of renewed faith. Joe stood tall, heart racing with excitement as he clenched his hands in prayer. Overwhelmed by his transformation, he had a newfound urgency to share what God had done in his life. I was lost, he began, his voice trembling but strong. I felt abandoned and filled with doubt. But in this very presence, I found a sense of belonging. God has been planting seeds within me, and now I see them sprouting. A ripple of encouragement surged through the crowd, their eyes widening with recognition. They, too, had felt those moments of despair, yet here was Joe standing firm, testifying to something tangible and real. His transformation was not just for him. It became a beacon for others, beckoning them toward their path of belief. Margaret lifted her hands, calling attention back to the power of their collective faith. Look at this moment. Every story you hear today unlocks a link in the chain of our community. We are a part of something greater, something divine. But a familiar voice rose again, laden with the fragility of skepticism. What if we lose hope again? What if this is just another moment that fades? Can we risk believing? It was a voice they all recognized, a voice that spoke the truth of their hearts. Ah, Margaret replied gently, her gaze steady and inviting. Hope is not about certainty. It's about promise. When we embrace the unknown, we are invited to a deeper trust. Look at the stories in the Word. Each one wrestled with doubt and emerged transformed. Even a mustard seed can move mountains. In that moment, something shifted within the sanctuary. It was as if a breeze from heaven swept through, whispering of future joys hidden beyond trials. Margaret encouraged them to close their eyes for a moment. Let us breathe in this promise together. Feel it infuse your spirit, cultivating peace amidst uncertainty. Breathe in love. Breathe out fear. As they inhaled and exhaled in unison, the collective surrender ignited their faith. They envisioned their doubts being cast away like autumn leaves, transformed by the breath of the Holy Spirit. Each exhale was a release, a letting go of burdens that had clung too tightly for too long. When they opened their eyes, those weary faces shone with fresh resolve. Hope flickered in their eyes, ignited by the practice of shared faith. It was contagious, the way they began to nod to one another, struggling souls united in a tapestry of belief, woven by both joy and pain. Friends, Margaret declared, her heart pounding with passion, This is our cornerstone. Here, in this embrace of faith, we will be tested, yet we will rise. We will embrace the chaos as it leads us to renewed miracles. We will learn to dance in the storm, for His promise remains our anchor. The room erupted in a chorus of amens, hands raised high, voices reaching toward heaven in pristine harmony. But deep within, a question lingered: were they truly prepared for what lay ahead? Would they be ready to rise amidst trials that lay untold? Here, on the brink of transformation, they stood as a congregation bound not just by faith, but by the mystery of divine purpose unfolding before them. As Margaret concluded, "Prepare your hearts, dear ones. The storm may come, but so too will deliverance." And with those final words, the congregation felt the weight of expectancy build once more. Would they seize this moment? What miraculous revelations awaited them on their journey toward faith? The air thickened with anticipation, every heart beating in rhythm, each breath a vow to trust. Margaret felt the atmosphere shifting, charged with an energy that spoke of change, the kind birthed from turbulent seasons. "Let us not shy away from what is ahead," she urged, her voice rising above the murmurs. "Each challenge is a stepping stone, a chance to grow closer to the divine." Her words danced like the flicker of candlelight, reaching every corner of the sanctuary. Joe, emboldened by the collective support, spoke again, his passion igniting the room. "I felt it, the moment when despair threatened to drown me. But in the depths of my struggle, God whispered, He promised. And every day since, through storms and shadows, I've seen His light breaking through." A lingering silence wrapped around them, pregnant with possibilities. Faces turned toward Joe, eyes glimmering with unspoken questions. He was not just a testimony. He was a reminder of the journey they could share, the trials they could face together. Just as the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, Margaret continued, her voice steady and clear, "We too may navigate our own chaos. Yet, every trial holds purpose, right?" There was an agreement, a soft chorus of yes rising like incense toward the heavens. Suddenly, a whispered prayer punctuated the atmosphere, a plea from one of the quieter members. "Anna." "But Lord," she breathed, her voice breaking, "what if our faith falters before we see the promise fulfilled? Will you still be there in our doubt?" Margaret met Anna's eyes, a shared understanding passing between them. "Ah, sweet sister, that S where grace meets faith. Remember, it's not the size of our faith, but the goodness of our God. When clouds are heavy, faith may feel fragile, but that doesn't mean we stop believing." The room erupted in murmurs of affirmation. Each voice added to the tapestry of vulnerability and hope that wove them together like an unbreakable thread. They were all in this, sharing burdens and dreams alike. In that sacred space, Margaret led them into a worship song. As their voices rose, the sound transformed into a powerful wave, washing over weariness, fear, and doubt. It soared, lifting the congregation higher, urging them toward the divine. Tears began to flow, and hearts swelled with joy, a communion of souls bound by love. As the song faded into a gentle hush, the stillness brought clarity. The flickering candles seemed to glow with a more vibrant light, a gentle reminder of God's presence. With each burning flame, there was a promise, a beacon guiding the way through the dark. Then, Margaret placed her hands over her heart, her gaze softening. "Let us ask ourselves, what burdens do we carry that we need to lay down? What chains can we break as we journey together?" She invited them into silence, a moment of reflection, allowing hearts to speak what words often fail to express. The sanctuary held its breath, and in that unfolding quiet, a flicker of hope ignited within. One by one, people began to rise, sharing their struggles aloud. Each confession drew forth tears, laughter, and sometimes hesitant smiles, an acknowledgement of their shared humanity. "Together, we are stronger," Joe proclaimed, tears glistening in his eyes. "Together, we are a force of love. If God can change one heart, He can change many." As spirits lifted, Margaret sensed something shifting not just in the room but in the atmosphere, the birth of a movement, a collective awakening. Are you ready for what God will do in these 40 days? A rousing cheer swept through the gathered souls, affirming their readiness to embrace uncertainty. They would stand together, eyes set on the horizon, wild in their hope, adventurous in their faith. But deep inside, a question lingered just beneath the surface: what kind of transformation awaited them? Would they be brave enough to follow wherever their faith led? With breathless anticipation, they awaited the unfolding of God's plan, trusting that something miraculous lay just beyond the chaos. The new day dawned with a golden light, casting warm rays into the sanctuary. After a night of vulnerability and shared confessions, the air felt different, thicker with hope, lighter with potential. Margaret stood at the front, anticipation shimmering in her heart as she glanced around. Each face held a story, a promise, and Margaret felt the weight of their collective faith. This was more than a gathering. This was the beginning of something profound. Today, she started, her voice steady but brimming with emotion. Let's dive deeper. Let us not just scratch the surface of our needs, but allow God to search the depths of our hearts. She noticed the way eyes widened, faces softened, and breaths hitched. A hunger for deeper connection hung in the air. They were eager for God's transformative touch. As if on cue, Anna stood again, her hands trembling slightly as she cradled her own heart. I feel like God is asking us to surrender parts of ourselves that we've held onto too tightly. What if we gave him our fears, or our doubts? Her voice, once wavering, now rang with a gentle strength that captured everyone's attention. Yes, shouted Joe, a fire igniting in him. That's what it's all about. Let us unburden ourselves. When we lay these things down, we're making room for his promises. Each fear released draws us closer to the miracle he has prepared for us. The congregation nodded, agreement spreading like a wave, washing over them with affirmation. Flashes of personal reflection sparked in each heart. Unspoken burdens lifted briefly in the air like feathers caught in a breeze. Margaret raised her hands, signaling for quiet. Let us take a moment to pray together, she urged, inviting them into a shared prayer of openness. Let us say aloud what we wish to release. There was a palpable shift as voices whispered burdens: anxiety, resentment, guilt. Each confession was met with understanding nods and whispers of solidarity. They were not alone. They bore each other's struggles like a tapestry of faith woven tightly. When the prayer ended, Margaret felt a surge of warmth enveloped their hearts. God is here, he is tangible in our midst, she proclaimed with joy. But then, almost instinctively, she hesitated. Yet in the quietness of our release, there might be hesitation, doubt. It's natural. A deep hush settled over them. The atmosphere thickened with contemplation. It seemed as if the weight of the congregation's uncertainty materialized, creating a heavy but powerful space. What if our fear of surrender is stronger than our faith? Whispered a voice from the back, a tremor in the tone that echoed around the room. It was Sam, a newcomer whose large, soulful eyes conveyed empathy and raw honesty. That's the question, I senti it? Margaret replied softly. What if we willing place our lives in his hands? When doubt knocks, what do we answer? Will we trust? Encouraged, the group broke into smaller circles, sharing their personal stories and wrestling thoughts. Laughter mingled with tears. Breakthrough hung in the balance as intimate conversations flourished. Margaret walked among them, witnessing the raw beauty of community, a divine connection weaving them closer. Hours melted away as they prayed, exploring faith in all its messy colors, and suddenly, laughter erupted around one corner. A group was recalling moments when life had seemed unbearable, yet they had found strength and peace. The realization struck them a shared revelation. This was what God was doing. Their miraculous journey was not a destination but a series of steps taken in faith. As the evening waned, Margaret gathered the group back. Let us commit to looking for God's hand in each story over the next weeks. What we do now shapes the days ahead. They nodded, a spirit of purpose settling around them like a protective cloak. They left, filled with renewed resolve, hearts lighter, yet still carrying the question that trailed behind them. How deep would their faith take them in the coming days? What changes would they meet along the winding path to promise? With each step forward, they felt the promise of something new. A transformation awaited, unknown but undeniably vast. Would they risk embracing it fully? The sanctuary doors swung wide, and they stepped into the night, ready for the journey, hearts open for God's adventure. The night sky shimmered with stars as the congregation dispersed, their hearts beating in time with a newfound hope. Margaret lingered a moment, gazing up at the heavens. She felt a compelling pull, as if the universe itself was whispering promises into the very marrow of her bones. Each star twinkled like a reminder that even in darkness, light was present. This journey they had just begun went beyond mere words. It was an unveiling of the divine within each of them. Days passed, flowing together like a gentle stream. Each morning, the sun broke through the clouds with fresh mercies, while the evenings cast long shadows that mirrored their growing vulnerabilities. The group convened regularly, sharing breathtaking encounters and heart-wrenching struggles. With each meeting, Margaret felt the air crackle with anticipation, charged with the unseen forces of transformation. During one such gathering, Anna shared a powerful image that struck a chord with everyone. "It's like we're all seeds," Anna said, her eyes alight. "We need darkness to grow, don't we? The rains may feel heavy, and the winds fierce, but it's in that very chaos that we begin to unfurl and reach for the light." Gasps of agreement rippled through the room, as if each person could feel the fertile soil of their souls turning. "Yes," Joe echoed, his stance stronger than ever. "Chaos is the proving ground for our faith. Each tempest we face only means we're closer to a miracle, a new way of living." His enthusiasm was infectious, igniting warmth and conviction in all present. As they shared stories of their struggles, Margaret noted the threads of resilience weaving through their lives. There was Sarah, who had lost her job but found solace in serving others. And then there was Ben, who had struggled with crippling anxiety but discovered courage through prayer. These weren't just tales of hardship, they were the anthems of divine transformation, evidences of God's hand at work. Each testimony rippled through the sanctuary like a wave, leaving behind a safe space where vulnerability blossomed into strength. Yet doubts still lingered in corners of hearts. Late one evening, as the group shared a meal together, Sam hesitantly spoke up. "But what if we face a wall we can't break through? What happens then?" The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken fears. Margaret leaned forward, her voice soothing yet resolute. "That's the essence of faith, my friend. It's about trusting God to act beyond what we can see. Trusting that even when we hit walls, He promises to carry us through." Slowly, whispers of reassurance filled the table. They spoke of the times they experienced answers to prayer or miraculous occurrences. Little by little, they were reminded of the power that thrived in unity. In that firmness lay their collective strength like branches intertwining, creating a canopy that could weather any storm. "Let us be bold," Margaret rallied them, excitement bubbling in her chest. "Let us each commit this week to ask God for a sign, a moment where we can witness His promise in action." They nodded, their spirits heightened by a sense of adventure, ready to embrace the unknown. As they departed that night, Margaret's heart danced with expectation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was on the horizon, waiting just beneath the surface. A divine spark flickered within her, igniting the hope that was woven through their shared faith. Would they act upon their commitments? Would the heavens respond? Only time would reveal the unfolding of God's majestic plan. What awaited them was shrouded in mystery, yet bright with hopeful promise. The weeks ahead loomed before them, ready to challenge and transform everything they thought they knew about faith and the unfathomable grace that accompanies it. The air hummed with divine expectancy, swirling around the sanctuary as the days of waiting drew to a close. Margaret stood before her beloved congregation, heartfelt anticipation reverberating within her. Today was not just another gathering. It marked the culmination of their 40-day journey, a journey paved with chaos but leading straight to the gates of miraculous transformation. As voices entwined in prayer, Margaret felt the weight of weeks spent in vulnerability. She closed her eyes, recalling each shared testimony, each prayerful communion, each moment where doubt had wrestled with faith. Breathless, she opened her heart to the Lord, sensing the tides of change swelling around them. Lord, we are here, ready to receive your blessing. The buzz of the gathering quieted as the pastor ascended the stage, his face glowing with fervor, a reflection of the faithful waiting below. Brothers and sisters, he began. Today we stand at the crossroads of promise and preparation. God is calling us into the light. A collective murmur arose, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Margaret glanced to Joe, whose spirit radiated strength. He had come so far. They had come so far. Their trials had produced endurance, and their faith had begun to shift mountains. Yet, that flickering question loomed. Woven tightly within her heart, would they truly receive the miracle they sought? Let us remind ourselves of what we have learned. The pastor continued. Miracles don't always look how we expect them to. Sometimes, they rise from the ashes of uncertainty. Amens echoed in response, creating a symphony of unified belief. The atmosphere shifted, pregnant with the expectancy of something monumental. Margaret felt the familiar electric connection thrum through the crowd. Faces glimmered with hope. Here they were, vulnerable yet beautifully whole, gathered in pursuit of the divine. Now is the moment to step boldly into God's promises. The pastor proclaimed, lifting his hands toward the heavens, heart open, inviting the supernatural. Let us come together as one. If you need healing, strength, or a touch of his presence, come forward. Fear and anticipation danced within Margaret, sensing the pull of the congregation as they began to move. One by one, individuals stepped into the light, unburdening their hearts. Each footfall resonated with faith, igniting sparks of hope. Margaret stepped forward alongside Joe, who reached for her hand, their fingers interlocking in solidarity. They sought healing not just for themselves but for all who had journeyed with them. As they approached the altar, the soft light drew nearer. Margaret lifted her eyes, and with every heartbeat, a cascade of warmth enveloped her spirit. The pastor raised his voice. Let the winds of the Holy Spirit sweep through us. Let healing flow like a river touch every heart, every broken place, and every soul. The congregation began to sway in rhythm, a collective heartbeat echoing against the walls. Margaret felt the energy swell, a living tapestry woven by shared struggles and fervent prayers. The intertwining spirits, lifting burdens as they released doubt, created an immovable force. And there it was, a divine light flickered at the altar, pulsing like a heartbeat, reminding them of God's presence, tangible and real. Voices rose to a crescendo, calling forth healing and restoration, igniting fresh faith amid uncertainty. When Joe stepped forward, his heart drumming with purpose, Margaret's breath hitched. She leaned closer, whispering words of encouragement. This is your moment. Love. Embrace it all. Joe nodded, tears streaming down his face. They were tears of surrender, of letting go of the heaviness that had marked his days. As he stood before the altar, a hush blanketed the space, thick with anticipation. Joe, do you believe? The pastor's voice cut through the stillness, penetrating the depths of his soul. The question resonated, rooting deeply. With conviction blooming within, Joe answered, I do. I believe in the healing power of God. And as the words spilled forth, the atmosphere shifted, cascading through the gathering like a waterfall of hope. Light ignited around him, filling the room with an inexplicable warmth. Tears of joy streamed down the faces of those surrounding him, and Margaret gasped as she watched miracles were stirring. Claim your healing, Joe, the pastor exclaimed, beckoning forth the congregation's prayers, uniting their voices in a chorus of faith that soared toward the heavens. Margaret's heart soared with it, the weight of doubt melting away, replaced by a fierce belief in the divine promises. They were all there together, linked by faith, bound by love. Outside, the winds howled as storm clouds gathered. Yet inside the sanctuary, a different storm brewed, a celestial one, rooted in unity and shared prayer. As Joe lifted his hands toward the light pouring over him, a wave of grace enveloped him. Receive your healing, Margaret cried, her voice mingled with thousands of others. When the light finally burst forth, a wave of energy flooded the room. It was palpable. Not just a moment, but a tidal wave of presence crashing against every heart. Laughter filled the sanctuary, an unquenchable joy surging through those present. Joe stepped back, his eyes wide with awe, a radiance shining forth from within, visibly transformed. He reached for Margaret, pulling her spirited embrace closer. "I can feel it. Love. I can feel healing in every fiber of my being." Cheers erupted, uplifting their voices in delight. They were more than individual stories. They were a testimony of God's promise to work miracles inside and out. In that sacred moment, Margaret realized the chaos had indeed led them here. Each challenge had cultivated deeper roots, and together, they had birthed an unshakable foundation of faith. "This is just the beginning," she proclaimed, her voice alight with conviction. "We will continue to rise together, holding fast to what we have built, an unwavering community of love and spirit." As the congregation celebrated their shared victory, Margaret felt the weight of doubt lift and joy sweep in, filling every crevice of her soul. They had endured, growing stronger with each trial, now gathering strength from one another. The promise lay fully realized before them. They stood not only as individuals but as brave warriors of faith, ready to embrace every storm, challenge, and miracle unfolding on their horizon. "Now go forth," the pastor urged. "Share the light you have found. This is our commission." And as the congregation stepped into the night, drenched in hope, Margaret's heart sang a new chapter awaited. It would be a story of faith, promise, and unrelenting compassion. With joy abounding, they spread into the world, determined not only to witness miracles but to become them, hand in hand, heart to heart together in the adventure of divine transformation. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive faith stories that will ignite your spirit. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread this light to others. Comment your reactions and testimonies about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this manifestation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.